All right, good afternoon, everyone. Should be able to hear me just fine. Good to see you out there. Paul Traney going to dive into really playing with a lot of amazing colors and all that good stuff. And I'm getting it squared away now. So much to do, so much to show. I'm excited about this, and I hope you are as well. All right. Let's just go ahead and crop this image. There we are. Cool. All right. So, would love to hear from you and give you a warm welcome. Che from Belgium, Momanil as well. Felicia, good to have you here. Hari, Kara, good to have you. Fantastic. So, good to see everybody is here and present and accounted for as far away as Norway. And let me know what you think. I'm excited about this. It's literally like there's like one trick I need to show you that will really kind of change your perspective on how you can bend color, okay? So I'm excited about it. I'm gonna switch over. You can see some of these beautiful colors. Whoa, too many colors. Well, almost all of them. But that's the idea. So we're gonna have some fun here. And in fact, I'll switch right over into Illustrator. I already have some colors kind of squared away, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's actually start from scratch if we can, okay? So I'm going to dive into this and keep this interactive. I'm going to show you how to create gradients, metallic colors, and really start to bend these colors to make some nice holographic looks as well, like you just saw a second ago right in here, okay? So that's the idea. Let's just switch over back into Illustrator. Start where you want. Typically, I'm just going to kind of draw out a shape. And actually, what I have set up, and what I'd love to show you at some point, is I already have a bunch of gradients already kind of set up in my swatches. But typically, what it means is you'll open up your Properties panel. You go to the Fill color. It's just one of those days. Let's try this again. Let's try this again. Illustrator's like, whoa, you're trying to make me do too much. You're pushing too many colors at me. Right? Well, check this out. I'm actually going to start from scratch again. File new, brand new file, okay? I typically have a starter file that I've set up. It's called Superpowers, right? And that's actually where I have all my gradients set up. So I encourage you to make a Superpowers or just an amped up starter file like I've done, right? So I don't have to create these gradients new every time, okay? And I can also show you kind of where those go as well. Good to have you here, Horva. Alexis from Ecuador, fantastic. So let's kind of start again. Again, drawing out a shape. We can see it right here. We can go into the properties. We can go in the properties panel. We can click in here, and I can kind of change the color, right? We can see the fill, all that good stuff. We can change it to a gradient, by the way, of course. I'll click in here to a gradient. This is one of the ones I have set up. I wanted to show the Properties panel actually gives me everything contextually. So right down here it says, hey, you're doing a linear gradient, aren't you? Well, yes, you are. You can see it right over here. I could use the gradient tool. We get it. We know how the gradient tool typically works, right? You should kind of understand how this works. Okay, but I can do more with this as well. I can change it from linear to a radial, all from my Properties panel. So this is new. I'm going to open up my Swatches panel because I have all these gorgeous colors in here that I can play with. So I can change it to maybe something a little more pretty. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it. There it is. Okay. So again, you can see all these colors that I actually kind of set up in advance as part of my starter file. So I can pick one of these to go with. I actually really like this one. Let's get rid of that stroke as well. There we go. Kind of like that. Okay. So this is our linear gradient. We have our radial gradient. If I open up the gradients panel right in here, we can see gradient. These two have the same thing. As I kind of play with the fill, that's what I'm working with. I get the same thing over here as I do up here. I get a little bit more in the gradient panel right here, right? So I can edit the gradient, I can adjust all these controls, but I could adjust them on the image as well, right? So it's actually easier to kind of work on the image. But I want to go beyond that. Hust, you should know about this. Maz, Tom Sexton, let's dive into this. Because I want to get into some cool things. Everybody should know everything I've been talking about so far, from linear to radial. This is a new feature called the Freeform Gradient Tool. I can click on that, and that's going to give me color stops right here that I can then select and say, hey, you know what, let's put a splash of color up there. Let's put a different color right up here as well. And I'm playing with these, the Freeform Gradient Tool, right? Picking different colors, 4 different parts. Let's pick a yellow, and we can now manipulate these. This is new and gives us kind of new ways to work, because look, we're actually getting new colors right in here. We're getting green as we go from teal to yellow. Okay, and guess what? I can start to bend lines in there as well. So right over here, we have points. I've been dealing with points. I'm going to add lines right now. So let's click, and let's change this color to something else. Let's change it. What color shall I change it to? Let's change it to a purple. Here's a purple right here, okay? Now it's a line. Click, click, and this will bend and wrap around, and you get the idea. Okay, so that is the Freeform Gradient Tool. I want to edit it again. Just hit Edit Gradient. You can add another point in the center, and you now have new color possibilities that you just didn't have before, which is awesome. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I can also control the strength of a lot of these as well. Okay. Oh, Instagram icon is a good example of, like, again, this is pretty hot color. These gradients are pretty hot these days, shall I say, right? This whole idea of having a lot of gradients. But I want to go beyond this, right? So we've already amped this up. Wildernose, good to see you here, buddy. Fantastic. And again, I made something like okay here. Let's take it to the next level, because I want to make something like even cooler, okay? Because what I'm thinking is I would like to have a set of colors, and maybe not these ones. Let's go to these colors here, for instance, or these ones, right? And I want to bend these colors around. Okay, so when it comes to the Freeform Gradient Tool, I have to draw them in, but couldn't I push these colors around as if they're vector? And that's my goal, is to push these colors around as if they're vector. Okay, and I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go right in here. How do you do that? Because first off, this is your thought. This is what you want to do, is you'll be like, hey, there's something called the, let me click in here, you know, the warp tool, right? You can warp vectors, right? As I take this warp tool, it'll just bend lines, but it's not changing that gradient at all. And what if I can push that gradient around as simple as I can of vector shapes? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go into Object, down to Envelope Distort, okay? And typically, if you do this, Envelope Distort, you'll do like Make with Mesh. And give me 1 second. Yeah, cancel. Go into Envelope Distort, Make with Mesh. So we want to sort of manipulate the mesh. Maybe 2 rows and 2 columns. I'll click OK. Same problem, right? We click right in here. It doesn't bend the colors. This doesn't do me any good. Well, if you take a closer look in there, let's just undo that. Envelope Distort, Envelope Options, right in here, Julia. As I select Envelope Options, it's this option right here, Distort Linear Gradient Fills. So this is what I want to do, Kayla. Distort all those linear gradients as if they are, you know, vectors. So that's the idea, selecting that, clicking OK. Now when I pick Envelope Distort or any one of these, right, whether it's Make with Mesh or Make with Top Object, but I'm going to go with Distort with Mesh, and now I can start to pull those around like so, right? And again, I can, you know, kind of play with this and arc this out by adjusting these Bezier points, but again, now I can even take that same warp tool, okay? And let's just change the brush size to maybe 250. All right, and all I did is double click on the tool itself. These are my warp tool options, right? So that's what's happening. Click OK. Basically, give me a big brush and start to push those colors around like so, right? And now I'm actually manipulating colors as if they're vectors, which I think is really cool. Andrea, hopefully you like that. Good to see you, Andrea. Fantastic. Yes, it is. It looks like a pure Lisa Frank fantasy. Thank you for that, Jasmine. Yes, Lisa Frank in the house. So whether you want to use these manipulation tools as if they're vectors, you're actually able to do that as well. Whether it's warp, twirl, pucker, bloat, all those fun ones. Okay, but you have to use these tools. Going up here under effect is not going to distort it the same way. Okay, let's go beyond that. Let's kind of show you another way of distorting. Let's grab a... Oh, what shall we grab? Rectangle. Zoop. Fantastic color. An ellipse. Let's make an ellipse a circle, as it's known. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of make with warp with top object. Okay, so I'm going to select both of these shapes. It's the same process. Go into Object, Envelope, Distort. And you have, again, I did Make with Mesh. There's Make with Warp, which is really easy. And Make with Top Object. Okay, so making with Top Object, here it is. Right, and because, by the way, since I have under Envelope Options this checked, Distort Linear Gradient Fills, I can distort these gradients right in here. So selecting this and pushing, pulling, you get the idea. See how it's following that? Look at that. Right? Again, I just like having this sort of control. Even if I wanted to remove parts, I should be able to. But again, just manipulating this accordingly. Let me know if you have questions. This is currently on YouTube. So if you're wondering it's going to be on YouTube, it currently is on YouTube. If you search for me, Paul Tranny, that's where you'll find it, but I also plan on recording it and uploading it later. Right? So this sort of level control is what I personally want, you know, and it's how I've created this other file. Unfortunately, I kind of had a crash, so I kind of lost some of these gradients. But again, you kind of get this holographic look. That holographic look, quite frankly, looks kind of like this, but all it is a bunch of these gradients actually set to something else. In fact, check this out. If you're wondering, hey, can I go back in and change the gradient? Of course you can. As I double click and go inside here, let's take a look at it. This is the gradient. Let's change the color to something else, right? You can see it changes. We can go to something crazy, right? And you can see all those lines being warped, right? So this is why I like Illustrator over, and I love Photoshop, but this is the power of Illustrator to be able to change things after the fact the way we want them. Right? So, Kayla, thank you so much. I'm just waiting for somebody to tell me, hey, that's a pretty cool feature. And I'm like, I know, right? It is cool. So, again, taking that, I could always release it. Object, release. You can see sort of the original shapes that were used to bend those colors around. So, hello, Pernell from Denmark. I love Denmark. Denmark's like fantastic. Really cool place. And again, the last distortion you want to do is probably the Make with Warp. You know how that works. We're able to bend those colors. Let me bring more of that into view, and let me hide the artboard since it's getting in the way. You can hide artboards, kind of let you just kind of roam around and play with what you want. But as we go into Object, Make with Warp, we get these. I want to make sort of a warping of something actually a little more vertical. Let's do a bulge, for instance. No. Arc is kind of a pretty good example. And those colors are actually bending. Look at that. I decide I want to make a rainbow. I can do that just as easily, right? Going inside, changing that color to my rainbow right here. In fact, let's rotate it. right in here, gradient, 90 degrees. There we have, let's go negative 90. There we have our rainbow, right? All squared away, all easy to change at any point in time. So again, that's the idea. We've really bent a lot of colors from a rainbow to something that gets a little bit more surreal and holographic. And I feel terrible that I actually lost my file from earlier, but you get the idea. Let's open up this one. Has a bunch of gradients, and I'll show you the final results. So you can see right in here some other options. Simple gradients that you then save as part of your master file that you could use at any time, and then manipulating those using the envelope distort technique. And let's just turn that off. Hide grid. You could see the idea right there. What's the big secret here? There's just some transparency set for this object is all it is. And that's all you typically do. Is if I select this object, adjust the transparency, it tends to look a little bit more like holographic. Another thing I can do as I kind of wind down and answer any questions you want, you can go into Effects Gallery. So right in here, and there is... Wait for it. Glass. No. Let me zoom out. It's not the one I want. You could see what glass does. Glass might work. I would definitely need to crank it up some more. Let's get into this. Wait for it. Wait for it. Plastic wrap. There it is. There's plastic wrap that will actually give you some more metallic effect where you can control the highlight strength, as you can see, right there, and the amount of detail and ridging and stuff like that. So you get the idea. Those are the effects. But again, after you do your own distortion, as you then want to kind of go in and maybe add a filter like that. So hello, Keela from Hello, sounds like you're from Mexico. Sorry, this is English speaking only. I'm so sorry. Same thing for Rodrigo, but hola Spanish, and I'm sorry. Oh, by the way, and I saw this on Adobe Stock. So this is where this idea came from. I saw this and I'm like, can I emulate this photograph actually in a vector format? And that's kind of how we ended up with something kind of like, Luis says, me gusta, glad you like it. That's great to hear. Muriel, good to have you here as well. That's about it. I'm going to let you go. Just kind of recap. Don't forget about what you have, the percent of what you need. And that allows you to obviously add those color swatches and play with those all day long, as you can see. Cool. All right, everyone. Well, have a wonderful day. I'm going to turn this into some gorgeous artwork for creating cool textures that are, again, metallic. All that would have been is I would have used the black and white gradient. Would have done the same thing. I chose to use something a little bit more like absorbing and reflecting color is what it's doing. So this, in my opinion, is still metallic. So, all right, I'll let you go. Fantastic. Feel free to let me. The next is sort of the design component of this. So I'll be doing some Photoshop live stuff on Friday. So feel free to just follow me on the social media links you can see below. And yeah.